Sam first plays the tapped Woodland Cemetery, John plays the Command Tower, Tom plays the tapped Sacred Foundry, then Extra plays a Swamp, and actually casts something, which is a Vicious Conquistador. As Sam takes his second turn, he plays a Swamp and casts Milliken. Before passing, John plays a Swamp and casts a Talisman of Dominance. He passes. John plays a Plains and casts Arcane Signet, determined to keep up with Sam and John, then passes to Extra. Continuing his early vampire role, Extra plays a Plains and casts a Markov Baron, before handing it back to Sam. Sam first activates Milliken, milling 1 and adding a colorless pip. He casts Arcane Signet, then follows it up by casting Circle of the Land Druid, milling 4 on ATB. He passes to John. John plays a Swamp, then casts Court of Locthwain, becoming the Monarch as it enters. With nothing else, he passes, drawing to the Monarch trigger on his end step. Tom plays his commander, Tetzin, Gnome Champion. Upon entering, Tetzin triggers, milling 3, and letting Tom return Eye of Ojata into his hand. Tom then plays a Darksteel Citadel for turn, then passes. Extra plays a Shine Shadow Snarl, revealing a Swamp from his hand. He casts his own commander, Clavileno, first of the Blessed. He goes to combat, attacking John with both Vicious Conquistador and Markov Baron. Clavileno triggers, putting his effect on Vicious Conquistador. Conquistador also triggers, making each of Extra's opponents lose 1. As John is unable to block anything, Extra steals the Monarch and gets to draw on his end step. He passes to Sam. On his draw step, Sam dredges Golgari Grave Troll, milling 6 permanents in the process. He activates Milliken, milling an additional permanent. He uses the floating mana to cast Life from the Loam, returning 3 lands from his yard to his hand. He plays a Forest for turn, then casts his own commander, the Mycotyrant. Sam passes, with Mycotyrant making 7 1/1 fungus tokens on his end step. John then takes his turn, and on his upkeep, Court of Locthwain triggers, and John exiles the top card of Extra's library. He casts Prosper to home back. With nothing else right now, he passes, with Prosper triggering and exiling a card from the top of his own library. The turn then moves to Tom. Tom first casts Eye of Ojata, triggering Tetzin and milling 3 to return Fabrication Foundry from his graveyard to his hand. He immediately casts Fabrication Foundry. He plays a Command Tower as his land for turn. He then casts Treasure Map, triggering Tetzin again, milling 3 more cards and returning Clay-Fired Bricks from his graveyard to his hand. Sam passes. Extra plays a Swamp, then goes directly to combat, attacking Tom with Clavileno, putting Clavileno's death trigger on himself. Tom takes the hit, and his second main, Extra plays an Indulgent Aristocrat. He passes, drawing the Monarch trigger on his end step. On Sam's draw step, he dredges Life from the Loam, milling 2 permanents. He plays a Swamp for turn. He then swings the Mycotyrant at Tom, while sending all 7 of his fungis at John. Tom declares no blocks, while John blocks 1 of the tokens with Prosper and takes the rest. In his second main, Sam mills a permanent with Milliken, then casts Bootlegger's Stack. He moves to his end step, and Extra responds by blowing up Mycotyrant with a generous gift before he's able to make more fungus tokens, while giving Sam a 3/3 elephant. The turn then moves to John. On John's upkeep, he exiles a top card of Extra's library with Court of Locthwain. He plays a tapped Frostboil Snarl from exile, triggering Prosper and making a trigger. He then casts his commander, Don Andres the Renegade, losing 1 life to his talisman in the process. He then passes, with Prosper exiling a card from the top of his library on end of turn. Tom starts his turn by crafting Eye of Ojata with 2 artifacts from his graveyard, transforming it into Apex Observatory, which enters tapped, and Tom chooses Artifact as its required card type. He plays a Power Depot for turn, then passes to Extra. Extra plays a Swamp, then casts Edgar, Charmed Groom. He goes to combat, attacking John with Vicious Conquistador and Tom with everything else. Clavileno triggers and puts his death trigger on Markov Baron, while Vicious Conquistador makes each opponent lose 1 life. John blocks the Conquistador with Prosper, with the Vampire's death trigger making a 4/3 tap demon and letting Extra draw a card. Extra then passes, drawing another card to the Monarch that no one has been able to steal from him yet. Sam then takes his turn, playing a Terramorphic Expanse as his land drop. He uses Bootlegger Stash's effect to tap 5 of his lands to make 5 treasures. He then taps Milliken, milling 1. He casts Nadir's Nightblade, and cracks 2 treasures to recast Life from the Loam in order to return 3 more lands from his graveyard to his hand. This additionally triggers Nadir's Nightblade, who trains each opponent for 2. Sam then goes to combat, swinging the 6 fungi at Extra, who blocks 1 with Edgar, and takes the rest, losing the Monarch to Sam. The Fungus dying also triggers Nightblade once again, draining each opponent for 1. Sam then passes, drawing to the Monarch. On John's upkeep, he exiles the top card of Extra's library with Court of Lochwain. John plays a Clearwater Pathway from exile as his land drop, making a treasure with Prosper. He then casts Deadly Dispute from exile, sacking his Talisman to draw 2 and make a treasure, while making an additional treasure with Prosper. Don Andres also triggers, making 2 tap treasures on the side. John then proceeds by casting Share the Spoils, exiling the top of each player's library as it enters. He casts Orzhov's Signet from among the exiled cards, triggering Share the Spoils and exiling from the top of his own library, then making an untapped treasure with Prosper, and 2 more tapped ones with Don Andres. He repeats this process again, casting Thaumatic Compass from among the spoils, exiling another card from the top to share the spoils, while Prosper and Don Andres make their respective treasures. He then casts the Ruinous Powers from among the spoils, exiling from the top and making more treasure with Prosper. John then finally passes, exiling another card from the top of his library thanks to Prosper, while Tom activates Treasure Map to scry 1 before moving to his turn. Tom starts off by casting Brass's Tunnel Grinder, triggering Tetzin, milling 3, and returning a Dowsing Device to his hand. Tunnel Grinder's ETB also triggers, letting Tom discard 5 and draw 6. He then taps Apex Observatory, making his next artifact spell he casts this turn free. The spell he chooses is Unstable Glyph Bridge, and Tom chooses to keep Tetzin, Prosper, and Circle of the Land Druid, then destroys all other creatures. Tetzin also triggers upon the Glyph Bridge entering, milling 3, and whiffing this time. Clavileno and Markov Baron's death triggers also resolve, with Extra drawing 2 and making 2 tapped 4/3 demons. Edgar also dies and transforms into Edgar's Coffin. Sam was also supposed to drain his opponents for 6, thanks to Nadir's Nightblade, seeing his 6 fungi die, but he forgot. Tom then continues, casting Thraben Gargoyle, triggering Tetzin, and returning Enthusiastic Mechanaut to his hand. He plays a Spectator's Seating for turn, then decides it's time to craft Tetzin, exiling 6 artifacts from his graveyard to transform his commander into golden-gear Colossus, making 2 1/1 Gnome tokens and transforming Thraben Gargoyle. He then swings golden-gear Colossus at Extra, forgetting that crafted creatures still have summoning sickness. Well, let's just say for the sake of the argument, the Colossus then triggered, transforming Unstable Glyph Bridge and making 2 more 1/1 Gnomes. Tom then passes to Extra. On Extra's upkeep, Edgar's Coffin triggers, getting a Bloodline counter and making a 1/1 Vampire with lifelink. Extra plays a Plains for turn, then casts Nesting Dovehawk. He follows it up with the Vran Executioner Thane. He goes to combat, triggering Nesting Dovehawk and populating one of his demons, consequently putting a 1/1 counter on the Dovehawk itself. He swings 2 of his demons to John, who declares no blocks, then passes to Sam. On his draw step, Sam dredges Golgari Grave Troll again, milling 5 permanents this time. He plays a Forest for turn, He then taps 6 of his lands to make 6 treasures thanks to Bootlegger's step. He recasts his commander, the Mycotyrant, using the treasure mana, and ups his descent count by 5. He then casts a Wolf Shredder, making a 0/1 goat as it enters. He then moves to his end step, but John crushes his dreams by terminating the Mycotyrant in response. While Sam's only consolation is to draw to the Monarch and pass it to John. On John's upkeep, he exiles the top card of Extra's library with Court of Locthwain, and the top card of Sam's library with the Ruinous Powers. He plays a command tower from among the spoils, making a treasure with Prosper, and exiling the top card of his library to spoils. He plays an Alfeshni, then casts Mortify from exile, targeting Tom's transformed Thraben Gargoyle, which triggers Prosper to make a treasure, and Alfeshni to copy Mortify on the stack, this one targeting the Wander Glyph. Both creatures bite the dust. Then John casts Ramirez de Pietro, Pillager, from exile, making a treasure with Prosper, and a hasty token copy with Alfeshni. Both Ramirez's trigger, and John loses 4 life and makes 4 treasures. He then casts the Beast, Deathless Prince, which enters tapped with 6 stun counters, gaining control of the golden-gear Colossus until end of turn. He swings the Colossus at Tom, triggering it and untapping his stolen Thaumatic Compass, and making 2 1/1 gnomes. Tom doesn't block and takes the hit, which untaps the Beast and lets John draw a card. Not wanting to give up his shiny new toy, John decides instead that if he can't have it, no one can, and blows it up with rapid hybridization. He then passes to Tom. Tom first recasts Tetzin, milling 3 and returning Soul Ring to his hand. He casts Emery, Lurker of the Loch, milling 4. He then activates Observatory, making his next artifact free. He uses the free cast for a modest enthusiastic Mechanaut, then casts the Soul Ring he just got, and passes. On Extra's upkeep, Edgar's Coffin triggers, getting a Bloodline counter, and making a 1/1 Vampire with Lifelink, also triggering Nesting Dubhawk, which gets a 1/1 counter. He plays a Plains for turn, he casts Trionic Resonator, following it up with Rite of Oblivion, sacking one of his Vampire tokens to exile Alfeshni. This triggers Ran, draining each opponent for 2, with Extra copying the effect with Trionic Resonator. He goes to combat, making another demon thanks to Dubhawk, which also gets a 1/1 counter. He attacks John with 3 of his demons and the Dubhawk, putting an end to his shenanigans. He then passes to Sam. Sam plays a Forest, then casts Nyx Weaver. With nothing else, he passes, drawing to the Monarch on end of turn, while Tom scries 1 with Treasure Map. On Tom's turn, he activates Emery, letting him recast Unstable Glyph Bridge. Here we go again. He activates Apex Observatory to make the cast free, then he casts Unstable Glyph Bridge. As it enters, he chooses to keep Tetzin, Extra's Vampire, and Circle of the Lion Druid, destroying the rest. Tetzin also triggers on the bridge entering, returning Golden Guardian to Tom's hand. Sam then responds on the stack and exiles Nyx Weaver to return Mirkwood Bats from his graveyard to his hand. All the other creatures dying also trigger Bran, who drains all of Extra's opponents for 2. Tom then plays a Deserted Beach for turn. He then has enough mana to recraft Tetzin into golden-gear Colossus, exiling 6 artifacts from his graveyard as he does so. Colossus entering transforms the Glyph Bridge and makes 2 1/1 gnomes. Tom then forgets again that summoning sickness is a thing, and swings the Colossus at Sam, flipping Brazz's Tunnel Grinder into Tekuthlon, the Searing Rift, and making 2 more 1/1 gnomes. Sam declares no blocks, and loses the Monarch. In his second main, Tom casts Optimus Prime, Hero, using mana from Tekuthlon, letting him discover 6. The Discover nets him a spring-loaded Saw Blades, which he casts. Tom then passes, drawing to the Monarch on end of turn. On Extra's upkeep, Edgar's Coffin triggers, getting a Bloodline counter, making a 1/1 Vampire with Lifelink, and transforming back into Edgar. He plays a Vault of Champions for turn. He casts Elenda, the Dusk Rose, following it up with Apprentice Necromancer. After that, he passes, and Sam makes 2 treasures thanks to the stash, before going to his turn. Sam starts his turn by playing a forest. He then casts his Pain Engine, Mirkwood Bats. He activates 2 of his lands to make 2 treasures, making his opponents lose 2, which is enough to take out top. He then activates 6 more lands to make 6 treasures, making extra lose 6. Sam then recasts the Mycotyrant for 7 using his treasures, triggering the bats 7 more times. Seeing that he's now trapped in an unescapable situation, Extra concedes the game to Sam.